Well, hello and welcome to the Internal Mobility Podcast, where we explore all of the ways for you to reach your potential here at Randstad while also making this giant company a little easier to know and understand. I'm thrilled because today our guest is Cameron Brett. Cameron is our new president in our PTS specialty. Welcome, Cameron.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Chris.
Now, I've heard that you go by Cam. Is that true? Is there a preference?
Either works, but yeah, I generally go by Cam.
Okay. Well, welcome, Cam. I am excited for everybody to hear your career story because I've gotten snippets of it and it's pretty incredible. So let's start there. What's your Randstad journey been like?
So I spent half of my life living and working in Japan. So I went to Japan in 2002 thinking I was going to be there for a bit of a tour around Asia, maybe spend 3 months, perhaps 6. But that ended up being 20 years. And the last 10 years I was in Japan was with Randstad. So I joined Randstad actually the last 8 years. So I joined Randstad in 2014 in Japan, and I worked in the Tokyo office until 2022. And in Japan, I was responsible for launching the professionals brand and then what we used to be called Randstad Technologies. So those are the two businesses that I was responsible for. And in 2022, I relocated back to Canada, which was actually my first time ever working in my home country. And I was working for Randstad Canada for a relatively short period of time, but I was running professionals in engineering. I then moved into a role in global where I was the global head of talent operations. So I was working in the talent team, helping our largest countries bring the partner for talent strategy to life. And then in June of this year, I moved to a role in the US, as you said. So I'm responsible for running part of PTS. And so in my global role, my address officially was in Diemen in the Netherlands, but I was working out of my home here in Vancouver. And I'm still working out of my home in Vancouver, even though I'm running the business in the US.
Okay, I heard a handful of specialties there, multiple regions. How have you been able to navigate that? What do you attribute that success to?
Okay, so first of all, in terms of the actual to move across regions and countries and specialties, the key for me was great conversations. So I take my great conversations very seriously, and I was lucky enough to have bosses that also took great conversations very seriously. So during those conversations, we would map out my career trajectory and what I wanted to do long-term, and then break that down into short-term goals and what I needed to do in order to get there. So the move from Japan to Canada was about 2 years in the making. It originally started in a great conversation. I was then able to map it out with my boss at the time. And it didn't have to be Canada. I just wanted to work somewhere other than Japan to get exposure to other markets. And it just ended up that a role opened up in Canada. But really, yeah, I think the key was having good or meaningful, great conversations, having a boss that was really supportive of it. And then, transitioning into a new country or a new specialty, I think what has made me successful, or at least what I did, is always start with the view of trying to understand. So before I brought anything to the team or started sharing my ideas and opinions, I spent at least a couple of months trying to understand, learning as much as I could and talking to as many people as I can. So not jumping to conclusions and not actually relying too much on previous experience. I think sometimes leaders want to rely on what they've done in the past too much. And when you're in a similar business, you somehow do that. But when you move across countries or into different lines of business, you really need to rely on those competencies, but try and learn as much as you can about that new business before starting to formulate your plan.
Oh, that's great. I'm so glad you mentioned great conversations. Anybody that has not had a great conversation that's listening to us now in the last 3 months, go schedule one with your boss. It's not boss dependent. You get to control your growth. And I'm so glad that you had those leaders along the way, Cam. I know most of Randstad has, but the ticket really is great conversations. It's textbook, what we want everybody to live out, what you've done. It's cool.
And I think the key, Chris, is it was not relying on my boss to lead the great conversation. I would go into a great conversation, or I go into great conversations very well prepared. I know what I want to talk about. I have specific questions. I know what I'm asking my boss to support me with. And so really, I think that's important to have ownership of the great conversation, not expecting the person you're having it with to do all the work.
Yeah. And then why would you put your future and success in the charge of somebody else, right? Like
Sure.
you really
Absolutely.
do get to write your story, but you've got a lot of help around here too. It's cool. All right. So as you are building PTS, as you're listening and then designing the future for PTS in your segment, I'm sure there's somebody listening to us right now that's curious about what's happening in that specialty. Tell them what kind of skills or competencies you're looking for in the future hires for PTS.
Well, I'm responsible for two businesses within PTS. One is the strategic customer group, and the other is life sciences. And if people had previous background working with enterprise customers, that's would be a huge benefit in the strategic customer group. People who have sold to large businesses, who have recruited for large businesses with strict SLAs and different rules of engagement, that would be the best case scenario for the strategic customer group. But I mean, it really is about having a strong customer or client-centric mindset. I think that's where we would need to start if you don't have that previous experience with enterprise businesses. With the life sciences group, again, people that come with experience with life sciences, that's ideal. Otherwise, people who have experience working in a highly specialized area, so who have had to learn about job profiles, especially technical profiles, or a specific customer industry segment where they really had to learn a specialized area, I think would be key to success.
Excellent. All right. So you heard it from Cam. If you're interested in those segments or those parts of PTS, and you've got that experience, reach out to me or anybody on the team, and we'll get you connected. Cam, what's the greatest piece of career advice that somebody's ever given you?
So the best piece of career advice I ever got was, and I've got a lot of good career advice over the years, but it was Jos Schutt, who runs HR for Asia Pacific. And Jos and I have known each other for a long time. He was the head of HR in Japan while I was there, but he was running Asia, but also responsible for Japan. And before I went to Canada, Jos gave me the simplest but best advice. He said, be yourself. It was really profound at the time because I was kind of trying to craft how I wanted to show up in my new role in Canada and the type of leader I wanted to be. And I was sharing that with Jos, and he said, yeah, that's great. But at the end of the day, Cam, you were chosen for this role for a reason. You're going there for a reason. We believe in you. Just be yourself. You know what you need to do. Just show up and do it. And I think leading with authenticity, being yourself, I think that's where we're going to be our best and where we're going to be able to perform at our best. And so I think that would be the best career advice that I've ever received.
It takes a lot of energy to try to be somebody else, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's a really good way of putting it. Yeah, and it was interesting because we talked to your individual development plan and how we can turn our weaknesses to strengths or how we can build on weaknesses. But I think that there's also a lot of benefit in really understanding what you're great at, what you are your unique skills, and how can you leverage them? How can you do more of the things that you're great at? Without avoiding things that you just don't like doing. That's not what I'm saying. But understanding what are your unique gifts, your unique talents, and really finding a way to bring those to work every day. That's
powerful stuff. That's great. All right. So before you go, tell us your Randstad why. What keeps you here?
It's interesting because that's changed over the years. When I first got into this business, I've been doing it for about 20 years. And when I first got into it, it was all about, I was very financially driven. I still am, but I was really motivated to make commissions. That's kind of what was driving me in the early years of the business. And that's okay too. If people are still there or that's how they'll always be with their careers, that's fine. But for me, while it still was a motivator and still was a why, it shifted over time. And it shifted to now my why is I want to have a positive impact on the lives of as many people as I can. And that means the people that I'm directly responsible for leading starts with them. But if I do a good job in developing leaders and they're going to have a positive impact on their teams, And then those people have a positive impact on the lives of the talent that we're putting to work every day, the businesses of our clients, and we have a positive impact on the people working for those organizations. So I think that this job really provides us with the unique opportunity to impact so many people's lives. And that's what motivates me. That's what gets me out of bed every morning.
Well, you are well positioned in an organization to have big impact, big positive impact on a lot of people. Welcome to the team here, and thank you so much for being generous with your time today.
Thanks, Chris.